Okay, so then Tasha's gonna call, so let's set up like, you. Really job description. Yeah, this is really, this is like a lot of.
Look at my class. Mike, Malik, you trying to go along, man. My hands inside.
إسماعيل السلام عليكم أسرار ما شاء الله عدنان وش كونه حبيبي بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا فمن يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله ثم أما بعد السلام عليكم. This is something that really delights me. MashaAllah. Sanya, how are you? Alhamdulillah. To see all of you, to see we have 9 participants online. You know, it's like we actually have a class today. Or maybe it's just because it's Valentine's Day. I don't know. But nonetheless, I prepared something a bit different today. You know, Ibn Hazm is an Andalusian scholar. Ibn Hazm was from Spain. He was a Spanish scholar. And when people think about this fusion of Islamic and European culture, if there's one person that kind of represents that fusion, it's Ibn Hazm. Ibn Hazm was a very, you know, of all of the characters in traditional Islam, whose work I've been able to read, whose biographies I've been able to study, there's nobody quite like Ibn Hazm. Ibn Hazm was sarcastic, he was witty, he was funny, he was crackling smart. Wa alaikum salam. What's going on, man? J.B. Pritzker told everybody it's okay. J.B. Pritzker sent an email, yeah, you can go back to class, it's okay. MashaAllah. He was crackling smart, he was funny. He was the polymath. He had a lot of different interests and he would write about everything. This is Ibn Hazm. And he was an Islamic legal scholar, but he was very much like a man of letters. You know, so he wrote in literature, he wrote in poetry, and he was a nonconformist. He would take like traditional positions that people held about, you know, the Sharia, and he would just take a different position. And then he was brilliant enough to argue and defend his position, right? So he wrote a small treatise on falling in love. And I thought that we would read some today. What's that? This is the special. Ibn Hazm, you know, he wrote a small treatise on falling in love. And sometimes it surprises people to learn that, man, what's going on? What happened? Everybody came back. I am thoroughly pleased. Wallahi. Masha, what happened, man? Because for a while I thought it was just Sonia and Tariq and Iman, and then Amir is not here.
Assalamualaikum. I'm online.
MashaAllah. كيف الأمور؟
الحمد لله أخبارك سيدي.
الحمد لله على كل حال. وعليكم السلام. إيه الأخبار؟ No, MashaAllah. Alhamdulillah. I feel like, okay, forget that. We got to go back to some Shama'il Muhammadiyah. I feel inspired to teach today, man. You know, MashaAllah. So Ibn Hazm wrote this treatise on love. And it's interesting, I think, to some people that an Islamic legal scholar, as celebrated as Ibn Hazm, would be writing about things like this. But this is really the golden age of Islamic scholarship, where Muslims weren't people with this little provincial kind of religious tradition, but rather people concerned about the human condition broadly. So they wrote about lots of different things. They were interested from science to literature to, I mean, you name it, right? So when I first came across this passage, I thought, wow, this is, and it's real, and it's good too. He says, love has certain signs which the intelligent person quickly detects and the shrewd person readily recognizes. Of the first of these is the brooding gaze. You know, you look at someone, right? You can't take your eyes off of them, right? And this is why in the Quran, of course, ghad al-basar, like lowering the gaze, right? And I find this also interesting that Allah tells men to lower their gazes, and He also tells women to lower their gazes, recognizing the kind of sexual personalities of men and women and our parity in that. So it's not just that men are always seeking women, nor is it that women are always seeking the attention of men, but women and men are seeking each other, right? So Allah Ta'ala says, lower the gaze. You know, the Prophet ﷺ was with Fadl ibn Abbas. You know, Ibn Abbas was a cousin of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and he's very famous. Ibn Abbas is one of the most well-known companions of the Prophet ﷺ. Sometimes he's called Tarjuman al-Quran. He's like the interpreter of the Quran, right? He had a love of the Quran, and the Prophet prayed that he would have, you know, amazing prowess at interpreting the Quran, right? But he had a younger brother named Fadl, and nobody knows about Fadl. So much so that if you say Ibn Abbas, it could be Fadl ibn Abbas or Abdullah ibn Abbas. Everybody knows about Abdullah ibn Abbas. Nobody knows about Fadl ibn Abbas. But Fadl was younger than Abdullah. And when the Prophet ﷺ was making Hajj al-Wada', like the farewell pilgrimage, Fadl was walking, and the Prophet loved children. So he just told his camel to kneel down, and he just grabbed Fadl and just put him on the camel, right? You know, like, come on, just ride with me, right? And Fadl felt like the most special person in the world. Like, I'm making Hajj, I'm with the Prophet Muhammad. And as they were making Hajj, a beautiful young woman came to ask a question about the manasik. She came to ask a question about the rites of pilgrimage. And Fadl was so taken with her beauty that he just couldn't take his eyes off her. Like, and he's making Hajj. He's supposed to be thinking about, you know, Allah and the manasik. And so he just looked at her, and he's just completely fixated on the beauty of this woman. And the Prophet ﷺ took his chin and turned his face the other way and just continued answering the woman's question. Fadl turned back. And the Prophet took his chin and just turned the other way. He turned back a third time. And the Prophet took his chin and he just turned back like this the other way, right? So after the woman departed, people came up to the Prophet ﷺ. They're watching from a distance. And they said, is this a part of Hajj that you get right here and then you make your chin like this? You know, like, you get right here and you go like, trying to figure out. And the Prophet said, no. They were just two young people. And I just wanted to protect them so the shaitan didn't come between them and make anything happen. And then he said, the first look is forgiven. Meaning, like, if you are awestruck by someone's beauty or their charisma or their, magnetism, that first look, the Prophet said, that's forgiven. That's almost like that's a natural part of our human nature. He said, the second look, you're taken to task for that. Allah is not pleased with the second look. So that first look, and you look up, when you look back, now you've entered the impermissible, right? That second look, right? So Ibn Hazm says, the first of these is the brooding gaze. The eye is the wide gateway of the soul, the scrutinizer of its secrets, conveying its most private thoughts and giving expression to its deepest hid feelings. This is a faqih. Islamic scholars don't write like this anymore, right? He said, you will see the lover gazing at the beloved unblinkingly, right? His or her eyes follow the loved one's every movement, withdrawing as he or she withdraws, inclining as he or she inclines. So he's talking about, you're watching, you're almost about to fall over, right? He said, just as the chameleon stare shifts with the shifting of the sun, the lover will direct his conversation to the beloved even when he or she purports, however earnestly, to address another. Right? This is the kind of love that we don't even know, where a person is talking to someone, but they're not even talking to the person they're talking to. It's like they're thinking about someone else, right? They're consumed with someone else. He's talking about, these are the signs of love, where a person is so in that, that infatuation, that it's almost like nothing even matters. Right? Lauryn Hill and D'Angelo, which I might be too young for that. You know what I'm saying? But this is what Ibn Hazm, and nothing even matters. Like I'm not even. It's almost like nothing else matters, right? The Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Zuyina li hubbu thalath min ad-dunya," that the love of three things in the dunya has been made dear to me. The first thing he said, prayer. I love prayer. Perfume, and he said women. And some Muslims, they read that and they get a bit uncomfortable, because we know that a lot of Orientalists and Christian evangelicals, they charge that the Prophet ﷺ was a sensualist, someone that used his position to take advantage of women. Hogwash. Astaghfirullah. No, nothing could be further from the truth. Right? The Prophet ﷺ was married to Khadija for 25 years. One of the only monogamous marriages in Mecca. He spent the heart of his youth, right, as a monogamous man, right? From the time of 25 until 1540, and then 13 after that. So 28 years. The Prophet ﷺ was married to Khadija in a monogamous marriage at a time when monogamy was not common, and due to his marriage to her, he had become very wealthy. Right? He had become very wealthy, but he simply had no interest in anybody else. Right? They said the Prophet ﷺ and Khadija only had one argument, that she wanted him to spend more time with people in her family. And he said to her, I will never worship Allat and Al-Uzza. Like, there are people in your family that are idol worshipers. And, I'm never going to, this is before Revelation. Like, that's not me. And she said, look, forget the idols, just be with my family. And the Prophet, ﷺ, he actually consented and said, okay, and started to spend more time with her family. Right? That Khadija had a sister named Hala. Right? After Khadija passed away, they said that the Prophet ﷺ was sitting and he heard the voice of Hala. He would perk up. He'd perk up, like, he was like, what's happening? Just her voice reminds me of Khadija, radiyallahu anha. Right? So this was someone that had a deep and passionate, loving relationship with just one woman for 28 years. And by the time he married a second time, he was an older man. When the Prophet ﷺ started to marry, different women, he was an older man at that point. And one thing anybody can tell you is that, as you get older, love gets deeper. I don't know if I'm being too encrypted or you understand what I'm saying. In terms of what your concern is in love, it gets deeper. It's much less physical, right? Because you're much less physical. That's for all of us. So the idea that the Prophet ﷺ was a sensualist, nothing could be further from the truth. But he was a man who loved very deeply. People said that in the seerah, when Khadija died, radiallahu anha, the Prophet could be heard weeping for days in the house. This is the Messenger of Allah, weeping for days, heaving, sobbing for days. After the Fath of Mecca, the Prophet ﷺ enters Mecca. Of course, now he's a ruler, he's a conqueror. Everybody is saying, come to my house, you can stay at my house. He goes and he pitches a tent next to the grave of Khadija. That's where he wants to be. He's entering Mecca as a conqueror. He can have anything. He sleeps under a tent next to Khadija's grave, right? SubhanAllah. There are stories that you read about the Prophet ﷺ and Khadija that just melt you. Even the story that we all know, he has this experience in Ghar Hira, and it's a frightening experience. I mean, he had an experience with the angelic, right? And he doesn't know what's happening. He has no analog for this, nothing in his frame of reference for this. Who does he run to? Now, mind you, a lot of people don't know the Prophet ﷺ and Khadija, they live near Marwa. You know, Safa and Marwa, their house was near Marwa. Just to get to Hira, it's like an hour and a half, and that's on like a paved walkway that they have now. It must have taken hours. He could have gone to he could have went to his best friend, Abu Bakr. He could have gone to his father figure, Abu Talib. He could have gone to, a close confidant, Ali ibn Abi Talib. He could have gone to Hamza. He goes to his wife. That's just an indication of how deep their bond was. That at this time, I'm shaking, I'm uncertain, I'm unsettled. I want my wife's presence. And he said to her, Zammiluni, Zammiluni, like wrap me, cover me, hold me, embrace me. I think about the vulnerability in that moment. Embrace me, embrace me. And she said that she took hold of the Prophet, and for a long time, he was just shaking. He didn't even speak, right? So just think about this. For anyone that says, Muhammad made this up, this was just his way of implementing some social reforms in Mecca, right? He's just he's a social reformer, but no more than that. He would stage all of this. I'm going to go home, pretend like I've seen something angelic, something I can't explain, shaking my wife's arms, right? Ask her, Ma bi laqad khashitu ala nafsi. What is happening to me? I'm afraid for myself, right? And then she affirms him. Now, brothers, I want you to think about this, man. There's a way that we have been socialized to think about masculinity and femininity. And one thing, especially in the older movies, you don't see this as much now, but it's always a woman that is hysterical. And a man is this portrait of calm, and he says, woman, calm down. Everything is under control. This is just your anxiety, but good thing for you, I'm here. Okay, my love, let's handle whatever it is that seems to be bothering you. And he walks out or something like that, right? In this, who's hysterical? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's hysterical, right? Shivering, shaking, unsteady. Am I losing my mind? Am I possessed? What? And who's steady? Khadija is steady. La yukhti Allahu abada. Allah would never disgrace you. Allah would never disgrace you, right? And then she starts reminding him of his virtues, right? You're good to people. You reach out to your relatives. If anybody has an issue, you support them until they deal with their issue, right? You support orphans. Abshir. No, this is a good thing. This is a good thing. We'll go talk to Waraq bin Nawfal, my cousin. He's a Christian and he has some sense of these sorts of things. We'll go talk to him. This was all her idea. Look at how interesting. If it wasn't, think about history. If it wasn't for this woman, this Risala wouldn't have seen the light of day. She believed in the Prophet ﷺ before he believed in himself. He didn't know what was happening. If it wasn't for her, think about what if she would have said, you know what, you are crazy. No, man, I don't mean that to be irreverent. I'm serious. Well, you know what, you are crazy. Maybe you are possessed. No. I believe in you. I believe in you. I think sometimes we forget that she was much older than the Prophet. She was 40, he was 25. Right? She was older than him. She was wealthier than him. She had much more status than he, much more money than he. when Allah Ta'ala says in Duha, that you were a'ilan fa'aghna, you were poor and we enriched you. What do you think the tafsir of the ayah is? We enriched you through your relationship with Khadijah. That's how you were enriched, right? So, he was indebted to her in a way that is almost indescribable. And his love for her was indescribable, right? I mean, and Khadijah was a heavy. She was a boss. They said that when her trade caravans would go to Yemen, sometimes the camels would number 800. Right? She's one of the wealthiest women of Quraysh, right? And, this love that we're reading about, this kind of love where a person is completely taken with someone. People say the Prophet ﷺ was taken with her in that way, right? I'll tell you one more story about the love of the Prophet ﷺ and Khadijah. The eldest daughter of the Prophet ﷺ, Zainab, she was married to Abu al-As, who was a Meccan who hadn't accepted Islam at the time of Badr. Eventually he did. But this was the son-in-law of the Prophet ﷺ. And he was fighting against the Muslims, but he was doing it mostly as a formality. Like he really didn't want to do it, but he's like, just to keep face with my tribesmen, I got to go out there and, pretend like I'm, what I'm saying? But he really wasn't he really wasn't about that life. Right? But he ended up getting captured. And so for his ransom, Zainab, the daughter of the Prophet, she sent a necklace that Khadijah had given her. And they said the Muslims were going through and seeing the spoils of war. And when the Prophet just saw the necklace, he almost collapsed. When he saw that this is Khadijah's. And he said, send it back, send it back, send it back. Whatever it is, I will pay for Abu al-As's ransom. Send it back. Just seeing a memento that reminded him of her, he almost, right? Even more than that, they said that when Khadijah passed, radiallahu anha, people thought the Prophet was going to die. Right? That's what they call the Amul Hazm. When she died, they thought it probably won't be long. He probably will die. That's how connected they were. Right? I've heard that in real sources that when she died, people said, well, he's probably going to die. That's how sad he seemed. And this was the messenger of Allah. So my point is the kind of love that Ibn Hazm is writing about, this is a part of our tradition, right? That people can love each other that deeply. Allah talks about, husbands and wives, and his وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَهُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. That God placed between husbands and wives love and mercy. He didn't say like duty and responsibility. وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَهُمْ مَسْئُولِيَّةً وَالْمَهِمَّةً, something like that, like duty and responsibility. No, love and mercy. Right? Love and mercy, mashallah. He says, when the loved one speaks, the lover listens with rapt attention to his every word. It was like that at the beginning. It was like that at the beginning. That was a joke, by the way. It's still like that. It was like that at the beginning, right? He marvels at everything the beloved says, however extraordinary and absurd his observations may be. I was watching this movie once, and this guy was talking to his father, and his mom and his dad, they had divorced. And he told him, he said, I knew that your mother was never really the woman for me. And the son said, what makes you say that? He said, she never laughed at my jokes. She never laughed at my jokes. And when I thought about that, I said, that's really true. Because when someone you love says a joke, it's not about their timing or their delivery. It's, you're laughing because you find them amusing, attractive, cute. They can be outright corny, right? They can be just downright like, man, this person couldn't tell a good joke to save his life. But if you love that person, you say, oh my God, you're so funny. Oh my God, she is so just witty. And somebody else is like, witty. Their personality is like watching paint dry. I'd rather watch water boil and listen to that guy. But that's not how it is. When you love the person, it's like, you don't understand this humor.
Is that just the first time we see the joke or even the time?
I'll give it 2 times. Because I always say my jokes twice at least. You know what I mean? Right? He says that no matter how extraordinary or absurd, there's still this engagement because the engagement is with the person and only by extension with what the person is saying. He said, he believes him implicitly, even when he is clearly lying. Now, he's not talking about like grave matters. He's talking about like when I'm telling my wife my high school basketball stories. And the first time I told the story, I scored 15. By the 5th time I told the story, I had 35. I had 35. Baby, it's the 4th quarter, baby. Look, I'm sitting out on the wing. I got the ball. They're rushing me with a double team because by this point in the game, I must have had 35, 36. You know, I mean, she's sitting there. Oh man, 35. Oh, you were on that night. Okay. Yeah, I was on. In the back of her mind, she think, first time he told me the story, he had 8. He was just getting in the game. Now he has 35. But it's okay. It's a good story. Why let the truth get in the way of a good story? You know what I'm saying? It's okay. Hey, he said, even when he's obviously lying, right? The love is, that's really amazing. That's really amazing. You know what I'm saying? Right? He said, he agrees with him, though he is obviously wrong. So that when the lover is wrong in an argument where you're still trying to find a way, well, in a certain sense, the best example of that kind of pivot actually wasn't between 2 romantic lovers. Somebody told me about the bro code. A guy came to me and said, hey man, the bro code is real. Right? This is my, I forget his name, but he's in Washington. He said, the bro code is real. I said, what happened? He said, man, I was out with my wife. We were driving from, I want to say Seattle to San Francisco, something like cross-country drive. And we saw this white Audi. And we were like bugging how it seemed like we were with this car for like hours and hours and hours. And then that car got off and we stopped. And next thing you know, we're with another white Audi, right? But they had dark tints, so we couldn't see who was inside. And we weren't paying too close attention to the license plate. So I was saying, man, he was like, it's like 6 hours. I was like, that's the same car. And his wife was like, no, it wasn't the same car. He was like, no, that is the same car. I'm telling you, we've been with this car for like 6 hours. This is this is like crazy, right? It's tripped out. And so he said that the Audi got off to get gas. So they got off to get gas, right? And he said, I'm just gonna ask. And he said, hey, man, did you guys get on at Seattle? And you've been kind of, and he said, at first the guy was like, nah, we just got on, right? We just started out. He said, the wife was like, see, I told you. He said, the guy said, wait, hold on. No, you know what? Come to think of it, we did get on to Seattle. His wife said, why you got California plates? We were in Seattle. And then he said that the guy was walking the gas station, turned back to him like, the bro code is real. he said the bro code, like, yes, look, I understand. You couldn't be wrong in front of your wife. I get it. Here he's saying that is what happens with lovers. Person could be arguing with somebody, he's obviously wrong. But the lover is, wait, hold on, well, there's another way to look at this. I mean, your nose kind of fell onto his fist. I mean, he had it out there. You kind of more, hey, wait a second, right? That's why the Arabs, they have a saying, and you know what I'm saying? The Arabs, I can't be fair. There are some things, especially when love enters the picture, there's no fairness in it. If you ask me, who's the best this, who's the best that? Come on, man. That's why I think every person that says I have the best mom in the world, best dad in the world. I think they're absolutely sincere. Because to them, they absolutely do. Right? No woman in the world like my husband. No man in the world, no woman in the world like my husband. Smile. No woman in the world like my wife. No man in the world like my husband. I think everybody who says this sincerely, they mean it. Because that's their experience. One sheikh, he told me, he said, the problem with love between teachers and students is people don't see it in the same way they see love between like husbands and wives. Like you can have a teacher and you love them because God has put that between you and your teacher. Somebody else might hear them and say, I mean, he's a good Muslim brother with some knowledge, but she's a good Muslim sister with some knowledge, but it wasn't like life-changing for me. And some people, they get offended by that. My sheikh is you know who he is. He's the most knowledgeable sheikh in the world. Not recognizing that there's something that God put between you and that teacher, that you respond to their words in that way. You trust them in that way, right? I might hear them and think, well, yeah, it's cool. But I'm not like ready to go and pledge my allegiance to them. So I didn't have that experience. It wasn't that kind of experience for me. Right? But it's a personal thing. I like to, it's almost like my wife, to me, the greatest living woman in the world, other than my mom. Other than my mom. Okay. Now, to Tadic, she just really be a nice sister. You know what I mean? And I feel the same way about his wife. She's just a nice sister. Because whatever you all have, Allah put that between you all. And what Hadi and I have, that's something Allah put between us. Hopefully he doesn't put it between her and anyone else. And sometimes it's just like that, He said, the lover hurries to the spot where the beloved is at the moment, endeavors to sit as near to him as possible, sidles up close to him, lays aside all occupations that might oblige him to leave their company, makes light of any matter, however weighty, that would demand his parting, is very slow when he takes his leave. So you know how everybody who's now married remembers those conversations on the phone, 4 hours, 5 hours. Look, Steve busting up back there. You hang up. That's what Ibn Hazm is talking about. It's like, you hang up. And you can hang up. Okay, same time. Yeah, or count to 3. Well, you didn't hang up. Right? Right? He said that, he departs very slowly. And if he sees the beloved, he rushes to be near the beloved. Right? Almost as if, the way they say that between people that love each other, what is there's no formality. Right? We don't have, it's not like, there's ease. It's almost automatic. I see my beloved, I'm with them. Right? There's ease. Right? He said, other signs of love are that sudden confusion and excitement betrayed by the lover when he unexpectedly sees the one he loves coming upon him unawares. That agitation which overmasters him on beholding someone who resembles his beloved or hearing a name suddenly, or hearing his or her name suddenly pronounced. It's interesting. One of the coolest parts about a novel romantic relationship are those butterflies. You're thinking like, am I going? You're going to an event. I wonder if the person's going to be there, right? So that's what he's talking about when he says like that sudden excitement. When you happen upon the person you love unexpectedly. I didn't expect to see them, and there they are. It's like, all of a sudden there's anxiety, there's some nervousness, right? He says here, even hearing their name pronounced, like the idea that someone is talking about them. Huh? Right? You're attentive. It's like, wait, what's going on here? These are knowing smiles. You people know these signs. Who'd you, wait, who'd you talk? What'd you say? Ah, right here. Wait, how? You watching everything. That's so. I remember that, and it's a very beautiful thing. It's a very beautiful thing. I remember, tell you a story about love, man, and relationships. There was a woman named Mariam Rasul. You know this story. Mariam Rasul from Flint, Michigan. And no, there's a man named Amjad Tarsin that used to go to U of M. He was at the law school. And one day I was out with City Amjad. Now he lives in Allentown at Maqasid. Beautiful brother, studied in Yemen, Libyan, beautiful brother. And he was studying law at the University of Michigan. And we were talking about marriage. I was, recently widowed and he wasn't married. We were talking about marriage and he said, there's a sister at U of M. And, I see her at some MSA events and see her at Juma sometime. I could arrange an introduction if you want me to. Do you know what I said to him? I said, nah, the creme de la creme don't need anybody to arrange an introduction for them. He can attest to this. I said, nah, the kind of woman I'm looking to marry, she doesn't need anybody to arrange an introduction. I'm looking for the pearls that are in the depth of, I got to put my scuba gear on to get down. I'm not looking for somebody bringing it to me like, if somebody's offering it to me like this, it must not be valuable. I got to put the scuba gear on to get down in there. You know what I mean? I got to get down in the diamond mine. That's what I'm looking for. He said, you sure? You sure, man? He said, man, he was like, I really feel something. Wallahi, man, I just, I don't know her well, but I know you, and it seemed like it could work. I was like, nah, respectfully, don't worry about it. It's not what I'm looking for. I had this idea, like, it's not what I'm looking for. I appreciate it, but no. And that's how it ended. He was like, all right. He never mentioned it. So this sister named Mariam Rasul reaches out to me. And she says, I know someone that is really interested in you, but you don't know who they are. And they just want some basic demographic information about you. I was like, with the fear of rejection completely removed, right? Which, because she's telling me this person is interested in you. So I'm feeling like, look, I'm in the driver's seat here. Who is this? She clearly has good taste, Here's some basic profile I'll put together and give her this, Now, at the time, my wife didn't even know who I was. Had never heard of me, didn't know me from Adam, But Mariam, so skillful. She knew that if she said, I know someone who's interested in you, that I would be inclined to, move forward a little bit. Like if she said, why don't you give me a profile and I can give it to, I don't know, I'm uncomfortable with that. But she told my wife the same thing. I know somebody who's interested in you. He just wants a little demographic information about you if you want to, right? And so she gave me a profile. I looked, it was like a novel. It was so much, she had written pages. And I'm literally just skimming this thing like, man, what's a major? English lit? I'm just kind of reading. And then I remember saying to myself, and forgive me, but this is the real. I'm like, anybody that's writing this much, and I bet the person isn't very attractive. That's what I thought. I said, I bet. It just, I don't know. I thought, pretty doesn't have to do all of this. Pretty just has to say, I'm interested in marriage. Sure, the proposals just fly in, and you gotta do all this. And they profiled. So I scrolled to the bottom. There was a picture, and I said, "MashaAllah." So I'm really not, right? So We talked on the phone, and now she was friends with Amina Qureshi at that time, actually at Michigan. This is, 16J, right?
That was an apartment.
They had green shirts. Keep calm and come to 16J. Right. Keep calm and come to 16J. So, we talked on the phone and we hit it off. And then I went to Ann Arbor and met all of them and this, that. And so we got married. And we had a conference. And I see Amjad, because he only went to Michigan for 1 year and then he left. He did 1 year of law school and he figured that law school wasn't for him. It's like, then he went into Islamic studies. He was like, he saw me, he was like shaking. And I'm like, Assalamu alaikum, Habib, this is my wife. He said, Wallahi, that's who I was talking about. He said, Wallahi, that's who I was referring to. And we both sat there like, Allahu Akbar. He said, Wallahi, this is who I was. So when it's happening, it's happening. It's coming from all different directions. And he said, Wallahi, this is who I was talking about. I said, that's crazy. He's crazy. I said, that's crazy, bro. That's crazy. So he mentioned, he said, a man in love will give prodigally, just give and give. They say prodigals like wastefully, right? The prodigal son, right? To the limit of his capacity. But the brothers look at me now, Salim, like, Tardik, looking at me. Don't go into this side. Don't do this, man. Don't do this. We still trying to budget wisely, even though we newlyweds. We're trying to, we're a family of upward mobility. You know what I mean? Don't. Ibn Hazm, he says, a man in love will give prodigally to the limit of his capacity in a way that he formerly would have refused. If he were the one receiving the donation, what did he say? He said, in a way that he formerly would have refused, as if he were the one receiving the donation, meaning he will give like he's giving to himself, right? He will give as if he's the one receiving. Like he makes no separation between giving to his beloved and himself. It's almost the same. And that's one of the crazy parts about like marriage and love, when the love is very deep, that you really don't think of. There was two people really become almost like they still have themselves, but there's a shared space between them, right? That it's like, oh, I got to make time for this, even though it's not them. This is the other person's thing, but they just know, I got to be present for that. She likes that, so I got to do that, and it becomes almost like, it's like, he likes that, so I got to do that. I mean, it's like they don't even see it as like the other person's just like me. It's like I got to do that, And they'll even say like we have the therapist thing the Saturday morning, even though it's just maybe she's just going, but we got to do that. Well, we got to do that. It's almost like he's giving as though he's receiving. It's almost the same thing, right? He says, he, the one whose happiness is the object in view, all this in order that he may show off his good points and make himself desirable. How often has the miser opened his purse strings, the scowler relaxed his frown, the coward leapt heroically into the fray, the clod suddenly becomes sharp-witted, the boor, B-O-O-R, turned into the perfect gentleman, the stinker transformed into the elegant dandy, the sloucher smartened up, the decrepit recaptured his lost youth, and the godly gone wild, the self-respecting kicked over the traces, and all because of love. How often have people, they seem different, right? A lot of people, that have been in loving relationships for a long time, they can speak to how those things change them. You know, a thing that used to be a big bone of contention between Hadi and I was she was of the opinion, if somebody invites you to a dinner, you must bring something. And I used to say, man, we're rushing. It's no big deal. You know what I mean? You know, if you don't, I'm sure they won't mind. And we would get to like a 5-minute, oh, this is just bad manners. You have to do this. You have to do this. Now it's like, we're going to someone's house. I already come in the house. I got the flowers. I got, you know, the sparkling sodas. Am I good? Am I acceptable now? You know, you are good now. It's like, okay, let's go. Right? That's how often have, you know, we're not talking that anybody changes in their core self, but things that you know are agreeable to the one that you love. You assume those characteristics so that, you know, if someone, you know, likes to talk, you become a good listener, right? There's a hadith in the Shama'il of Imam al-Tirmidhi, the hadith of Zara, right? And she's telling the Prophet ﷺ a story, and it's so long. The hadith is so long. It's one of the longest hadiths in the whole book. And what I find, and she mentions it was late, it was after Isha. This is the Prophet ﷺ. He just like listened and listened and never interrupted her. He just listened. This is Aisha, just never interrupted. Listen and listen and listen. And she told poetically 10 examples of women that were in relationships with men. The one that had the best man was a woman named Zara. She had the best situation. The only thing about her man is that he saw someone else and then he fell in love with that woman, right? And she got remarried. But she said, the man I'm married to now, Zara, got remarried. If you took everything he gave me and multiplied it by 6, his generosity wouldn't come close to Abu Zara, like the man who divorced her. The Prophet listened to the entire story and said, my love for you is like the love of Abu Zara for Zara, except that I will never leave you, right? But he listened the whole time. He wasn't like, hey, come on, man, I got to get to sleep. I'm tired. How long is this story? I mean, it's like 3 pages. It's pages in classical Arabic and just listening and listening. So he's not talking about the people. I don't think people change for other people in who they are essentially. But if I know that, you know, something is agreeable to my partner, then I try to assume that quality to the extent possible. Right? MashaAllah. Right. He finishes, because we have to get out of here by 7. No questions today. This is a Valentine's special, mashallah. All these signs are to be observed even before the fire of love is properly kindled. This is just the beginning. Before its conflagration truly bursts forth, its blaze waxes fierce, its flames leap up. But when the fire really takes a hold and is firmly established, then you will see the secret whispering, the unconcealed turning away from all present but the beloved. Jazakallah khair. Jazakallah khair. MashaAllah. By the way, I don't even celebrate Valentine's, but
miracle with the class size.
but it was the Valentine's Day miracle, the class size. But